Aerial Photography by Abby McGrew. First, I want to explain to you about what flying means to our family. This is my great-grandfather, Hank McGrew. He flew a fighter plane in World War II. This is my grandfather, Darren McGrew. He flew commercial airplanes and for the Air Force. And here's my dad. He and my grandfather have a private plane. It's a Belonca Decathlon. And this is my grandfather's old plane that he got once he was retired. It's a small private plane. So, camera and photography background. The Niepce heliograph was the first photograph taken using principles that are still currently being used. In the past, photographs have been called sun writing from the way that the pictures developed. The lens gathers and focuses light onto a sensor, or a film. Film is a thin material that reacts to light and requires a chemical process to be developed into an image. A digital camera uses an array of tiny light sensors that measures the amount of light captured to create an image. It's called a sensor. Light compromises. Aperture, which is the size of the hole you're taking the picture with. Well, if it gets smaller, you get more depth of field, but you get less light. If it's wider, you get less depth of field, but there's more light. For zoom, you can get high magnification, but less light gets to the sensor, and vice versa. Lens, you can get a big, heavy, and expensive one, and that gets more light to the sensor. But yes, it is expensive, and vice versa. Exposure is how long the sensor is exposed to the light. If it's a short amount of time, it freezes the action, but there's less light to the sensor. If it's open longer, it gathers more light, but motion is blurred. However, sometimes you may want to do some of the things that get more light to sensor on purpose for artistic effect. For example, this leaf, it has less depth of field. Or this biker at the bottom. Its exposure time was long, so the motion was blurred. Controlling your camera. So, there's a little dial that adjusts your focus. The aperture is here. It shows you can control how big you want your aperture to be or small. Exposure or shutter speed, you can control how long it will stay open for. This here on the right is a special camera lens. It's a 35 to 80 millimeter zoom camera lens. And this dial here is where you turn it to zoom in or out. Lighting. Well, in aerial photography, you can only use natural light to take pictures because you can't use unnatural lighting such as flash and umbrella lighting. So the golden hour. This is the highest preferred time of day to do photography because of the dramatic lighting. It's considered the golden hour just after sunrise and right before sunset. High noon. This is when the sunlight shines directly down, making the subjects flat and plain. Photographers do not prefer this time when taking pictures. However, it can be good for taking pictures of reflective surfaces such as glass and water. The light penetrates deeper. Mid-morning and afternoon. No major highlights or deep shadows overtaking the photo, so it's a good time to take pictures of all sorts of people and landscapes. However, you must be careful of flat lighting. The blue hour. Photographers refer to the time before sunrise and after sunset, dawn, dusk, and twilight, as the blue hour. Only a few minutes in the day are considered the blue hour, so you have to be very quick. The contrast is low and it creates a cool pastel undertone. At night, you can create very dramatic images because you can choose your light source, car lights, street lamp, etc. You can customize the way light falls on the subject. I tried to make all or most of my pictures in the golden hour, but to take pictures of water, I took them closer to noon. Perspective. So, this is my grandfather's farm in two different ways. So this one was taken out of my dad's airplane. And as you can see, the 100 yards here is not at all the same as the 100 yards here. It's because of perspective. But in the satellite picture, it's taken straight from ahead. So the 100-yard marks are the same. Now this may look a little overwhelming, but I'll explain it. This is a sectional chart used for aerial navigation. It shows airports, all these little purple and blue circles, airspace, the larger rings, and landmarks. Pilots use latitude and longitude to navigate, much more so than cars. KMQS is Chester County Airport in Coatesville, which is where our airplane is based. You may have learned about latitude and longitude in school, but have you ever really thought about it all the time? Like, for example, did you know that we're at approximately 40 north latitude, 75 west longitude? It's key for a pilot to know these things. Now, this here on the right shows our flight plan, which is this blue line. It shows the coordinates, or the latitude and longitude, of each of these points that we put down. And it shows that we'll be burning 14 gallons of fuel, and it'll take us about an hour and 15 minutes. And these little tabs here, I just wanted to talk about. Well, one, yes, we're going to try to take pictures of BCMS so you guys can recognize it. Philadelphia Airport is this blue circle right here, and it has a lot of restrictions around it, which are these blue rings. I'll get to that later. Delaware VIP restricted airspace. This is old because he no longer lives there, but this is Joe Biden's old residence. No one is allowed to fly inside that red ring around his house. And these along here are just cities that we wanted to mark. This is the same map, but zoomed in. There's BCMS, LMHS, Marion Elementary, and these are the blue lines I was talking about earlier. In each of these rings, there are different requirements that you need to think about. If you're going between 2,000 and 7,000 feet, you must be in contact and follow the rules of the air traffic control. If you're in this ring, you have to be above 7,000 feet or below 1,500 feet to not do that. If you are within 1,500 and 7,000 feet, you must, again, be in contact with the air traffic control. Here, it's also the same, but from surface to 7,000 feet. Here, I just wanted to show you 3 different ways of looking at the same spot. This is an aviation map, Google Maps, and the satellite. So there's different priorities for each of these maps, so you see different things. This is the end of Cape May, which I used to plan which landmarks to photograph. I also used these maps to determine lighting based on the angle of the sun. For example, if I am going to photograph the Cape May Lighthouse at golden hour in the morning, I know that the sun is coming from this direction. Aviation forecasts. Weather forecasts for flying are much different from our usual weather forecasts, because all you really need to worry about while flying is the wind, the visibility, clouds, precipitation, and wind. I'm not going to go into a full dive here, but the best case is blank green circle, and the worst case is solid purple with long tails, which are these things here. It marks how much wind and gusts there are. For my test subject, I'm going to be photographing the Cape May Lighthouse. Why the lighthouse? Well, it's very interesting. And it's a good test subject because you can shoot from all different angles to see effects of light and perspective. Many people at school hopefully will recognize it. It's easy to see from air, and it's close by us, and of course it has beautiful backgrounds. So these are a couple pictures of me in our plane, Gwyneth. I'm just here with a nice background, and we did this photo trip to Cape May on February 21, 2021. I wanted to talk about these because I really thought they showed very good perspective angles. So I took 4 pictures of the same place, the Cape May Lighthouse, and this one is far and high, this one's far and low, this one's near and high, and this one's near and low. I really thought they showed perspective, and it's super cool to see them next to each other. These 2 pictures are of the same subject at different times. So this one at 7:15, that was definitely the golden hour. You can see the warm glow and the defined buildings in the background and the nice puffs of smoke. At 10:15, that's more mid-morning to noon hours. It really is still beautiful, but it's flat and white, and see the same building in the back, it just is not the same without that golden lighting. So, frequently asked questions. How fast is the plane? It can go about 120 miles per hour, but for pictures, we can usually slow down to about 85. It has to go at least 50 miles per hour or it stalls. How high can you fly? Around a mile, which is 5,000 feet, high for local flights. For pictures, we usually go as low as possible while still being safe. That's at least 1,000 feet above the ground, and sometimes higher, to make sure we could safely glide and land the plane in an emergency. How far can you go? The plane can go about 400 miles on a tank of gas. We usually plan less than 300 miles to make sure we have enough for unplanned emergencies. For example, if conditions are bad at the planned landing airport and we have to go somewhere else. How old do you have to be a pilot? 15 to fly by yourself as a student, and 16 to get a real license. Can I do stunts? The plane can, but we don't combine aerobatics with aerial photography. What kind of camera and lens do you use? I personally use a 35 to 135 millimeter zoom on a Canon EOS digital SLR camera. So, I'm going to show you some of my favorite pictures that I took on our journey to Cape May. I'm so excited to share these with you. I had so much fun taking these. So, this is best shot number 8, number 7, number 6, number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, and drumroll please, our number 1 picture, a beautiful scene of the Cape May Lighthouse, and I was really happy with this turnout. I'm glad I could get such a good one of the Cape May Lighthouse. And here's my bibliography.